Evan MIyakawa joins us. Evan Maya on Twitter. All the analytics, all the data, and so proud, Evan, of what you have built with your with what you do and how coaches are now recognizing you. We'll get to that a little bit later on. You are big into the kill shot. You're the one that I think for the first time ever really heard it that way. Houston got their kill shot. Florida got their kill shot. How many times when a team gets a kill shot do they not win the game?
So when a team goes on a 10-0 run, which I call a kill shot, they win 71% of the time. I think the even more important number is that when you have more 10-0 runs than your opponent, you win 81% of the time. So it's pretty rare that a team will put together a 10-0 run, a 12-0 run, something like that, and not win the game. And that's what we saw in both of these semifinals, I think, to extraordinary fashion. Auburn was up by like 8 or 9 points, and then Florida put together a 10-0 run, completely changed the momentum of the game. They took over from that point forward. They won the game. Duke was up 14 points on Houston in the second half. Houston goes on a 10-0 run to cut it to 4. And I think from that point, starting with that kill shot, they outscored Duke 25-8. They almost had another one right at the end of the game because they outscored Duke 9-0 in basically the last minute of the game. So it was really, really cool to see that both of those teams were down in a major way and then put together this big momentum-changing run, and both of those teams are in the title game tonight.
Evan, Rob Wright leaving, you sent me some numbers on him today, and his percentages just as a freshman were ridiculous. What kind of point guard, what kind of system does he fit the best, and how hard is this going to be for Baylor to fill this role?
Man, yeah, this is a big one entering the portal. I think Rob Wright, as a freshman, showed a lot of playmaking and scoring chops. He was really, really good in terms of distributing to the ball, in terms of having a big offensive impact for Baylor, both as a scorer and as a distributor. He's a really good three-point shooter. He's really good at the foul line. He also got a lot of steals this year. I think standalone, like his production as a freshman was really good. When you then take into account that he's just a freshman and he was an elite high school player, there is a big jump expected for him going into his sophomore year. We often see this from guys like him who show a lot of flashes in their freshman year and then stay in college and are playing their sophomore year. These guys can often be some of the best in the entire sport. So I have Rob Wright as a top 5 transfer in the country in terms of projected impact going forward. And obviously it's a big miss for Baylor if he's going to leave. But, you know, whatever program picks him up, I think they're getting someone they can really build their team around this offseason.
Evan, let everybody know, when I reached out to you last week to try to get you on to obviously lead into what was going to be the Final Four weekend, you had basically shut down doing a lot of things because of what was in front of you and also the weekend in San Antonio. Share that with everybody if you don't mind.
You spent hours selecting your patio sofa. Choosing that grill would have taken weeks. Probably your car needed way more time. For sure, you would have spent months mulling over that pool of yours. Protecting your prized possessions needs no time, though. Just visit coversandall.com, create a custom size per your requirements, pick a fabric, and personalize your cover. And leave the rest to us. Premium protection for all that you love.
Well, sure, yeah. So I don't like turning down 365 Sports because, you know, you guys have been a big part of my, you know, success and growth over the last really 4 to 5 years. But last week and what we've seen in the transfer portal, this has been an unprecedented couple weeks for transfer movement, for name, image, and likeness. The pending deadline of this house settlement today potentially is a date where teams could no longer quite shell out the money that they wanted. Really led to this situation where in the last 14 days, teams have been trying to actively just give out as much money in NIL as possible because they may have restrictions on what they can do going forward after today. I don't think that's going to be the case, but I think a lot of them were worried about that. So what you've seen is a higher demand than ever in terms of the NIL market for players going for maybe 2 or 3 times as much as they would have gone for in last year's market. So I've been working for kind of off and on during the season on a new tool that I just released specifically for teams, coaches, GMs to use last Wednesday that basically gives them a whole set of tools for figuring out how much players should actually be worth in the market in terms of their dollar amount. And and other tools that are really helpful for finding guys with specific skill sets for their roster. So I was really busy getting that out the door, getting that to teams kind of early in the week last week before I headed out to San Antonio for the Final Four. So I didn't do any media stuff last week because I was really focused on getting that done. A couple high major programs have already signed up for that and have been actively using that this week to figure out, correct market evaluations for these guys and ultimately being more efficient in the way that they're spending their money.
That's we're incredibly proud of what you've done with evanmiya.com, EVANMIYA.com. And I saw, was it the Wall Street Journal or Sports Business Journal, or who was it that also did a feature or quoted you in what you do?
Yeah, the Wall Street Journal did a feature on the kill shot. It was on the main page of their sports section on, I think, Friday, which was really cool. And, same thing with them. They reached out to me on Monday to see if they could get on the phone. And I, just being fair to everybody, said, I'm sorry, I don't have time to get more in depth with this. So we just had an email back and forth, and then they, put some quotes in there. But it was really, really cool to see a full featured article on the kill shot and my statistics behind it in the Wall Street Journal. That was really cool.
Don't forget now, we made you.
He was very thankful, gratitude.
No, he from the beginning there was an incredible segment when we first got you on, but we're really, really proud of you. Which of these two teams has the better chance tonight to hit the kill shot?
That's really tough because Florida has had the second most 10-0 runs in the country this year. But Houston is the kind of team that rarely gives them up, so it's kind of it's very back and forth. If I had to pick, I'd probably side with Florida just because they've been really, really adept at this. But honestly, it could go either way because I would have said Duke was the more likely team to have a kill shot in their game against Houston. Instead, it was Houston with the game-deciding run there. So I think it's a toss-up.
Can you have multiple kill shots in a game, and does that screw everything up?
Yeah, no. So like a team's record, when you can have games where you have two separate 10-0 runs in a game, and those teams rarely lose. If you have multiple of those in a game, my goodness, you've really put your opponent away. I mean, the biggest one that we saw last year was UConn played Illinois in the Elite Eight. The game was tied in the first half, and then UConn went on a 30-0 run, spanning from late in the first half into the second half to completely blow Illinois out of the water. That's very unprecedented, and because of that, I've nicknamed the 30-0 run a Husky going forward because I think UConn earned it, and obviously it really epitomized the run that they made, just kind of demolishing everyone on the way to a second title in back-to-back years.
So you have this great offensive team versus this great defensive team. They both played epic games on Saturday night. Will this game live up to that hype, or will we see two teams that are maybe a little tired and trying to hold it together?
I think even if we see tired teams, I still don't necessarily think it's going to be a blowout in one direction or the other. I think both teams really had to give their all to win their respective games. Something that really intrigues me about this matchup is I think if you're picking any team in the country that is a nightmare to prepare for in less than 48 hours, I think playing against Houston is probably that team. Because Houston's defensive identity and the way that they out-physical you and out-tough you and crash the boards, I mean, Duke struggled with them, and they had a whole week of prep. I can't imagine what the experience is like having to go against them on, 2 days after a tough game. And you look at Florida in this tournament, small sample size, but the two games that they've played in this tournament, 2 days after another game, where that game against UConn, where it was back and forth the whole game, in a game that they were supposed to win fairly comfortably, they ended up pulling it out, but that was tough. And then that second game in the Elite Eight against Texas Tech, they were down big and had to pull together a late run to win that game. So, again, I'm not overly reacting to that, but if we're looking for a potential weakness for Florida in this game, it's that they've struggled in these games that come quickly after another one, and I think Houston's probably a tougher team to game plan for in a short time span than anyone else.
And, Evan, I'm not saying other conferences don't do this, but we know the Big 12 has a lot of Saturday, Monday night games. It seems like
– yes, that's correct.
Yeah, multiple times a year. And, man, if you win, you're usually on the road. And if you're on the road, you usually get back home, but you don't have a lot of rest, and you don't get to do much on Sunday. So maybe that has a little bit to do with it if Houston plays well tonight because they're used to that. I don't know how many times they do that if at all, much in the SEC. Evan, we're proud of you.
I have one more
Yeah,
question
okay,
for
all
him.
right.
Bucky McMillan, I asked you about this just when we exchanged some DMs earlier, but he is there bringing Bucky ball, which is bombing threes and running a full court press to Texas A&M. I do not think he will do what Shaka Smart did when he went to Texas, which is change what he always ran. He's going to do Bucky ball. Is this something that maybe A&M needs to get them over the hump?
Yeah, I think so. I don't necessarily think that specific style is what they need, but I think a change in team identity is always fresh. And, we saw that this year with, Louisville, not saying that that Buzz Williams was Kenny Payne or anything like that. I'm not saying that at all, but just like a change in identity can really bring a fresh air to the fans and the players. And so, I think that's going to be a really, really interesting thing for them. I think he really fits what you want in a lot of these young coaches are really hitting out of the park in their first year or two at high major programs. You look at, Pat Kelsey at Louisville. You look at what Grant McCaslin has done at Texas Tech. I think that kind of coach is what you're getting in Bucky McMillan. And so, nothing's a sure thing these days, but I really like the hire.
Evan, thank you, buddy. Appreciate it. Proud of you. Have a great tonight watching the game and also with what you're doing moving forward. Evan Miyakawa with us, Evan Miya, M-I-Y-A, on Twitter.